Hmm.
I
So
missed the
yeah, we are
countdown.
live. You
I
missed the
missed the
countdown.
countdown.
Hi.
Yeah.
Well, I was a good countdown. Don't you think? I was a great countdown. We're live now.
You did a nice job, but I still miss the old one.
Okay, we are gonna use it for next time with
Oh, it.
with the cliche music and all of that. The music that none of us will
Oh
ever
yeah.
make. Well, I listen to a lot of music like
We
that.
don't need to make it. It's already exists. So
Yes. So we're going to talk today about the composition process again, but this one will be the second time. It will be part two. So Shantin will be talking about his compositional process or processes. I don't know. It depends. So do you
Very,
wanna start? I
very
will.
unfortunate that perhaps today it will be my opportunity to confess a little bit for the sins that I have committed during the composition. Um,
Okay, this is your confession to the compositional
yeah,
god.
confession time, and you two
To
are free.
Apollo. Probably to Apollo then. This is your confession to Apollo. He's
Uh,
the god of music. So let's go. Apollo, be merciful upon him.
I would like to say most of my pieces are inspired by some kind of personal events
Yes.
or some kind of literature. Um, for example, when I wrote my dissertation, actually I tried to look into some of the memories about my deceased grandfather and as classmates who also passed away when I further my study. So
Hmm.
most of my pieces are somehow related to my own experiences. Um, and very unfortunate for today's topic is I'm a very disorganized person. So I'm very unmethodical. Do we have such a word? Yeah, I don't really have a
Non
method.
methodical, I would say.
Oh, sorry about
Probably. Oh
that.
no. Oh,
so
no
you
sorries
so you
here.
see this
But if you think about it in the seminar, I don't think that most composers were really that organized. Like really. But yeah, that's a
uh,
topic for later.
I know some, but to be honest, like I feel like the ones that were more organized became better teachers, but not as
So
interesting
good.
of composers often.
Okay. Well, that's a
Because
point
if you're
that
really organized, you can really talk about what you're doing really easily. But what you're doing might not be interesting. I mean,
as
it could, but it
that's
might not.
a hard pill to swallow. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cool.
for example, last year, I think it was in November, an old piece of mine was performed in Hong Kong. It's titled as Snow, and it was about
As no,
buffalo as snow. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and it was about the landscape that
I remember that one.
I got to witness when buffalo was lowing terribly. I broke up with my girlfriend, and then I walked on the street, and then it's it snowed, and then I was dumb enough and walked to school for like half an hour, and then later on when I compose a piece, I need to compose a piece. And, oh, maybe this memory was suitable for such a situation. Okay, let's compose a piece and then title it as Snow because I couldn't think of a better title. So okay, Snow, okay, Snow, okay. So that's how I compose. So, but okay. So after having a initial concept, and I would think about what kind of sound I could compose for that kind of title or that kind of inspiration. So I thought of hmm, very quiet sound.
So does the
Quite,
actual title come first then?
yeah, most of the time
So
I
the
have the
actual title
title.
comes first.
Yeah, I usually I have the
Okay,
title. Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, I think very hard about my titles. But this one is the laziest one perhaps. So So I think about the sound of snow. I think about the sound of wind, and then I would try to like improvise, in my head or with my hand because I played the piano, and then I put things to, and then I try my best to put things together. That's how I usually compose. My process is mostly
On the
linear.
piano.
Yeah, on the
So
piano.
are you mostly composing on the piano then?
I usually do it
So
on an.
what's the instrument?
I usually do it
Oh,
on
sorry, I
and off.
want to know. Okay, and then what's the instrumentation for Snow? I'm just curious.
There's clarinet, violin, cello, and piano. But basically, for
Okay.
most projects, I I would try to improvise it on the piano or improvise it. Imagining myself as a conductor, so I just wave my hands, thinking about the sound and being crazy. For example, when I wrote my dissertation, because I have a lot of scraping sound, and the piece I try to pay tributes to my deceased grandparents and my deceased friend. So I scratched the table a lot, and then Tiffany at the time sat in front of me, and then
Tiffany is your current,
yes,
you
my
is your
wife,
wife, is your wife. Yeah.
but she was my girlfriend back then already. So she said she saw me cry. I don't know what to do with me because I improvised it. I thought a lot of things, and then I cried, and then yeah. So I I improvise a lot in my head or on the piano, or sometimes imagine myself as a conductor making various gestures. I try to improvise it. I think I I need this kind of physical connection to the music I write. I need
Oh,
this kind of feeling. Then I
yes.
and then I will process the feeling, and then I will try my best to write. But not all of the times I try to write out exactly what I hear it. Sometimes I will think a little bit more. I may twist my ideas a little bit. That's why actually, um, I mean, in the past I used paper and pencil, but if I use computer, I title the files with dates. So for example, today is April 1st. Then I would create a file named uh, 0401, and then very quickly I will have 0402, 0403, something like that.
So is
I will
this
write
file like a finale Sibelius file, or is it like a file of you improvising?
finale. Yeah, I improvise.
Okay.
I write my improvisation, or try to work on what I improvise. Uh,
Do you record your improvisations as a method of working too, or no?
no, I don't. I don't record it. Yeah, that's that's. Sometimes I do it in my head. So I don't really
Mhm.
record it. And and I don't know whether you have such a habit, but if I get stuck, I will go to take a shower, and then I will think about that, and then I would take a long time in this bathroom, and then Tiffany would say, "Oh, you must be composing. This took you like half an hour." And then and then yeah, but somehow why the reason for saying this is a confession is um because I'm not very organized. I I mean, before I work on the final version, I usually create like 10, 20, or even 30 versions, 40 versions. I I had a lot of much worse version for my dissertation, and then at that time, whenever Tiffany uh, ate with me, she would say, "Oh, today you had another version again." And but I think Tiffany is a really good helper because I usually try my best explain my concept and the process of translating my concept into music. I explain
Is
those
she a
things to
musician at all or no?
not at all.
Is she a musician at all or? Yeah,
Not a-
my partner isn't either.
so that's the best test because
Yeah.
they
Mhm.
if you talk about the pitches rhythm they will I mean Tiffany will get stuck faster than me so I have to explain it in a layman term, but this make me understand my work better. So yeah, so it's like a cycle. So I get an idea, and then I improvise, and I write it out, or sometimes I change it because I think I improvise badly, and then I talk with Tiffany, and I was say it like a huge discovery in
You
the world.
articulate it then. You
Yeah,
articulate it on layman's terms.
and
That
then
helps.
I
So
will go
how
back to my work and then compose again, and then I will delete everything I write, and then and then the next day I will tell Tiffany, "Oh, sorry, yesterday's concept was horrible. I have something else," and then I would say it like with a lot of enthusiasm, and then after 2 weeks, Tiffany would say, "Oh, you know what? Can you start working on something? I have heard enough." Something like that, and then but somehow because of this I will I will make up my mind. Yeah. Oh, maybe the file data in March 25th was better. Maybe sometimes I go back to it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
so how do you develop form? Is that something that you prescribe or go back and work, or is it something very intuitional?
Mostly intuitional, but sometimes I mean have to admit that I rely on some things that is more convenient. I I a little bit embarrassing to say that, but I occasionally try to do it like in a ternary form. So somehow the third part or fourth part of the piece is just like like a recap in some way. If I became a little bit lazy because I usually usually waste a lot of time in the earlier stage of the project, and then at the end I don't have time, and then okay, just recap a little bit, just bring something back. That's a huge thing because I think a few years ago when I attended a master class, and then the teacher immediately realized, oh, it sounds like a recapitulation, and then we had a long talk that time, and then
But you listen to a
yeah.
lot of classical pieces, and you told us earlier that you were practicing Rachmaninoff. So I'm guessing you listen to a lot of Rachmaninoff too, right?
um I love, yeah, yeah.
So
I think I listen to Bach maybe much more, like a daily dose of things. Yeah, yeah. My
yeah,
my goal of my life is to learn the Goldberg variations, but I haven't started yet. Yeah, because it's too long, and I'm
it's
afraid
a
that I
good
will
life
fail.
goal.
Yeah.
Well, I think that you should after that you should try the art of fugue. I like that one better.
Oh, really?
Well, that's just me. I don't know. It was
Yeah.
his last piece. It's very. I don't know if you guys know about it, and this is a small parenthesis, but the last fugue, he was already blind, and his son CD back had to transcribe it and stuff. But he left it unfinished, and it was the beginning of the subject, like three sentences or so, and the son writes. This is where at this point the composer died or something like that, but it sounds like really poetic. It sounds like it just vanishes away. It sounds like it dies. No cadence or anything, but yeah, the art of fugue.
But
Yeah,
but
Just interested in talking about processes. Well, that's how
Mhm.
that kind of relates. Like I'm interested in what a composer thinks when he's about to die, when he knows he's about to die. Uh, we can talk about that a bit later. But yeah, back to your stuff. About on form. What were you telling us about form?
I my process is hugely linear, and I I basically rely on my intuition when we talk about like form or proportion or material. So I I don't have a specific preference for a particular form, but usually my pieces are in 3 sections or 4 sections. Most of them are
Mhm.
pretty sectional, I would say, and yeah, I tend to use more and more repetition nowadays, and I recycle my stuff. I mean, I mean within the piece, I recycle my stuff quite a lot, and uh, but I would say um, improvisation has pros and cons here because I generate materials very quickly, but usually I don't know why I need that material. Sometimes I just feel, oh yeah, I need that, I want that, and then I write
Mhm.
it, and then maybe the next day I will regret, and then I will take that away. It happens a lot in my projects because I don't think carefully enough, I would say.
So sometimes you're able to write like 2 minutes, 3 minutes of music in one sitting. Would that be
I'm
possible for you?
No, I'm very slow, very slow.
But with
I
your
w-
Is
improvisation
it the
on the
generated materials or just the notation act that's slow?
my notate I notate very slowly, but maybe in my head I have like two
Yeah.
minutes or 3 minutes, and then because I'm not a very confident person, especially when I'm trying to notate my music. So I will sing that, play that, or conduct that, and then like maybe I will only write it after like a week or two. Yeah, and then when I
You still
find it,
remember it?
and then when I find that the deadline is too soon, then I will compose much faster. But
Mhm.
usually I compose very slowly. Yeah, because I go through
So when
everything in my
you
head
talked
for
about
many times.
like doing a lot of revision. So it seems like, I mean, you're saying that the maybe what you initially is very much just maybe a one-to-one based on like what you improv. That's at least what I'm interpreting. And then, so what are the revisions? Are the revisions like you doing more improvisation, or is that like you working in a different way?
Um, Usually it is like this. I improvise based on what I have written down, and then and then I will write it out. And usually, if it doesn't work, for example, if I find that, oh, if I keep on writing like this, it's real terrible. Let's say if I realize the fact that the music is terrible, then I may start over, and then go back to the step one again.
So one will be improvised or one will be the idea, an idea, right?
I will go back to do the improvisation or look into my ideas a little bit. Yeah.
Improvise and three right. Is this how it shows the screen on screen? Do you see the screen
Yeah,
or
yeah,
not?
yeah.
Is that more or less how you go about it? Idea, improvisation, improvise, and then write it
Right.
down. Notation.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually these three.
That's just to condense it in a
Yeah,
way.
usually I go through these three little steps repeatedly for quite a while. Maybe after a month or two, then I feel okay. Okay, I
Mhm.
think it's good. Then I will focus on the writing part a little bit more. Then I will use the piano less, but I will still sing and conduct. Because as mentioned, I need this kind of like, I would say, like a physical connection to the sound. I have to get the feeling or the emotion of it. And then I will continue to write.
Have you done work with improvisation as a pianist?
And
That's
not
a good question.
not really, yeah.
No?
But I mean, if playing the piano, I mean playing the chord for a pop song punk, then I improvise, but I don't really improvise professionally.
What did you say? What do you mean?
I mean, if
Improvise percussion? What?
if you improvise
Professionally.
some kind of accompaniment is improvisation. I do it regularly because I play the piano for the church, but I don't really improvise some kind of very good music professionally.
Oh,
Yeah.
I remember at UV, University at Buffalo, we had. Did you ever take classes with Hyde?
Uh huh.
You remember her? Do you
Mm-mm.
remember
Yeah.
her?
Yeah.
I know who she is, but I didn't take a class with her.
I took
But
Shankarian
I know
analysis
her.
with her, and yeah, she made us improvise on figure bass. Uh, there's a handbook about it. I will
Yeah,
later let you know about it.
I took that same class, but with Charles Smith. I took
Oh,
Shakespeare with Charles
yeah.
Smith, but he also did the same thing. So I don't know if it's like a UB thing or just something they had overlap or part of, I don't know, the coursework.
Yeah. So cool.
Oh,
It's pretty interesting that you didn't have to do that in the piano shunting because you enter UV before us, right? You
I
did
Yeah.
you take that class?
no, not at all.
No.
I
Oh,
escape.
lucky you.
May-
Possibly.
Maybe not very good, but I
Yeah.
did escape
No,
them.
it's my 1A minus at University of Buffalo with Shakespeare.
Oh,
Oh,
this
No, I deserved it though. I'm gonna say like the A minus might have been a little generous, but
I
yeah.
remember. Yeah, I took the
Um,
second part with the first part was with Hyde, and the second part was with Smith. So yeah, I also took that A minus. So
yeah,
we share it. Don't worry.
yeah.
oh. Fortunately, I didn't
I
take
mean,
it.
that's fine.
I didn't take it. Good job.
But I think that it
I,
would have been cool for you in that sense that in the figure
yeah.
bass area because they made you learn how they improvised in the Baroque era, and I will say that that would probably would have been the coolest part about that course.
I
Yeah.
believe if I could travel
I
back
don't,
to that time, maybe I would take the class because back then I was not that interested in Bach or Baroque music. But
No.
I wasn't that interested, to be honest. I became more and more interested in Baroque music after I graduated from UB. I I
mhm.
I think partially because I mean for piano instruction I use a lot of Bach, and then
But
I
yeah, and how
and
you
then
are
I
describing it like idea, improvisation, and then write. That's pretty much
Mhm.
what Bach did, and then go
Mhm.
back and fix stuff in the writing. But he will go to the keyboard all the time, and then after he's done with the keyboard, he will
Yeah.
go and notate it. Like, ah, pretty
well,
interesting.
by the way, I think I would like to talk a little bit about how my ideas are usually generated because earlier on I said most of my pieces uh, are related to my personal experiences, but I also compose pieces about some kind of imaginary situation. I mean the situation I imagine. For example, I composed a duo for violin and viola titled Lento Animato. So when I explained to performers, I told them it's basically like singing at a library, about about keeping our voice very soft. So in that piece, I wrote a lot of long notes and having a very long crescendo from nothing to pianissimo. So when I wrote the description or program notes, I tell people that um, when the string players when they try to hold a long note with a very slow crescendo, some kind of unevenness might be created, and then by doing this, the sound is animated. That's how I explain to the performers. And then in the I mean after their first few rehearsals, they sent me the recording, and then we talk a little bit about it, and then they said, "Oh, it was very nervous about my piece because a lot of long notes and a very slow crescendo, and they worked very hard to make it even and smooth." And then I said, "Yeah, that's the point." Um, I mean, sometimes, not always, I look into the physical properties of the sound. For example, I think 2 years ago I had a piece for mixed ensemble, which Western instruments and Chinese instruments, and that is titled Gong, Gong, Gong.
Yeah,
And then
I have it right here.
and
Do you
then
want
I then I then I thought of
for 7 musicians, right?
yeah I thought of how to bring out the richness of Chinese instruments and some of the Western instruments. Uh, And I would say that the piece is like a process of looking for richness and purity at the same time.
Do you want me to play a little bit of it? Like
Uh,
Yeah, it'd be nice to hear some.
okay,
now that you are describing it from the beginning or from the middle or what? Where from?
maybe from the beginning. Yeah,
From the beginning. Okay, give me a second. Share screen.
but I'm bringing these two pieces up here because I just want to say not every time my ideas are very poetic about breaking up or about like whatever romance or whatever encounter. Sometimes I work on something a little bit more abstract.
Clarinet, percussion, piano, viola, cello, sheng, and what's the difference between a sheng and a sheng? What's okay? I want to ask.
Because
Okay,
we say it Sheng and Zheng.
and sheng.
Zheng.
Okay,
Sheng is
that's very advanced for
like
me.
a wind instrument, and then Zheng is like a seether.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's pretty interesting. It's like the difference we have in on Western music since the beginning of Western music with the Greeks, like between the lyre and the flute. And that would be
Yeah.
Apollo and Dionysius or Bacchus, whatever.
Did you
Uh,
have a hard time mixing the Chinese instruments with the Western instruments?
oh yeah,
Um,
that's a good
because
question.
I've seen, yeah, because I've seen pieces that have done that before, and usually, I don't know, a lot of times the musicians really struggle at that like mix.
I think it's hard. I think it's hard. And but I I didn't truly have a way to do it. I basically relied on my hearing. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, very
Did the
not very.
performers have a hard time with playing it?
Um, for the junk player, it's a little bit hard because I wanted him to rub the string to create some kind of noise, but it was too quiet. So we work on it a little bit. Yeah, but but in general, they did a very wonderful job, I would say. Yeah. And then and we
Awesome.
had multiple workshops before the actual performance. That was very nice too. I usually change a lot after rehearsal.
Okay. So, well, let's listen to it. Let me know until when should I stop.
Perhaps it's about the time because
Yes, yes.
it's pretty long
I
already.
think
Yeah.
I think it was a well constructed climax. I like the climax. And how it was like a, an accumulation piece, you
But
might say. It's kind of like sparse sounds, but in the climax, it got that feeling you talked about of being caricaturized or talking about descriptive. What did you? How did you describe it to the musicians?
I told them it's like trees.
Like what?
Trees.
Like trees. Okay.
Yeah.
Um.
I told the performers that imagine you are a tree.
Okay.
Each individual is a tree, and then you have your own life.
Well,
Um,
how I will interpret that if I were a performer, it would be like in a caricaturesque, like a caricature type of manner. And I think that this is solely based on my. This is the first time I listened to this, so my interpretation. I think that that caricaturesque caricature description came out in the climax, especially. The other, like how you get there, is kind of like sparse sounds here, there, very ambient music, and stuff like, and sometimes being sparse apart, being dispersed, sometimes getting together, but then towards the climax, I think it works. I don't know about the form though, because you got a lot of more than it seems that it will. By looking at the waveform, it's a lot more of dispersed sounds, or no?
quite pretty busy actually.
Pretty busy.
It's
Okay.
quiet,
I
mostly quiet. Yeah.
quiet. Okay, then I will have to listen to it and
But
see. But it seems like the climax was right here, right?
yeah, I I told them it's like tree, and then it's like every individual has their own lives in the music, and obviously I can't improvise the whole thing myself. So, but I imagine myself as the violinist or the cellist or those players myself, or the piano parts I play myself to. I try to imagine what kind of physical gestures will be required for the performance, or what kind of emotion can can be brought out
There, you can
while
find it there.
performing it.
Physical
I
gestures.
I'm not a very good instrumentalist, to be honest. So, but I take I take a long time for every to imagine all kind of emotions or gestures for every bit of my music.
Would that be a UV thing to think about the gestures a lot in our music? Because I think that everyone
I
here
don't
thinks about
know.
the gestures, and about like the physicality that it takes, or how physicality affects the sound, the resulting
I
sound.
actually I did imagine how the performers play when I was younger. So, but I don't really base my compositions on those gestures. For example,
Okay,
in the
but
climax, you just listened. I
mhm,
would imagine how the pianist
did I hear
navigate those kind of figures, those kind of percussive writing. I would think about that, and then um, I will try to move my fingers and then imagine bowing myself and try to see if it works in some way. I try to feel. I would say I know it's not very accurate interpretation of essay. I only try to feel it, but that usually how I compose it. I don't know. Okay, for example, the glissando. I think maybe that's too quick. I think about it. I will move my fingers, for example.
that's very detailed, like the glissandi
Mhm.
that you're
The
talking
Yeah,
about right
I
now.
feel like you can in your music. Like I feel like you can make changes that if I am like not experiencing them, I'm just like looking at the paper, or I'm think that they feel like kind of subtle changes, but they come off like very profound. Because like you still have a somewhat like small scope of overall, sounds, and like I think you had, I heard the piece being like very kind of like sparse and kind of slower paced, and the pacing didn't really, it got a little bit quicker, but it wasn't like 0 to 10. It was like, 1 to 2 or 3, but and then when it comes back, but it feels, so much bigger, which I think is kind of cool.
I although I said I improvised quite a bit during my process, but my pieces you actually don't have any room for improvisation. Yeah, I mean, I would say very little room, because I didn't really instruct the performer to improvise. Um, for example, in the passage you have heard, the viola played at the highest register for quite a while, and actually I wrote it out. I wrote out the gesture graphically, so somehow they could improvise because I didn't specify everything, but somehow I also wrote the gesture out. So maybe it sounds like improvisation in sometimes, but I actually don't incorporate elements of improvisation in my music.
But still, if you notated the gesture, in a way, that's what Megan does in a lot of her music, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't make a connection at all between you two guys. Like, this is the first time I make
Mhm.
an actual connection, and
Uh,
it would be because of the notation, because of the process, because of what we're
well,
speaking right now.
I definitely, when so I think he talks about his process. I mean, my process isn't exactly the same, but I definitely see a lot of similarities. Like I don't think um, improvisation is as direct or as key, but it definitely plays a part, and it's like more hands on. I also think I'm kind of like disorganized and like um, chaotic, and a lot of the ways I think are similar, which I think is really interesting because I think our music is really different on the surface level, at least.
Yeah, yeah. On the surface level, yeah, I wouldn't make the connection. Like being on the same concert, it would be really strange for me. But at the same time, it seems like what you're describing, Shanting, is like you have these bits and pieces. Well, you kind of go adding them up and kind of glue them together, piece them together. Am I right or no?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
But
more or less that's what Megan also does. But at the same time, it
Mm-hmm.
you at the end you organize it in a way that it creates form. So it's kind of a pastiche approach in a way, but a very controlled pastiche, I would say, for both of you. Like how you describe, at least how you describe them. Uh, that's what I'm
Yeah,
getting
I
here.
also kind of wonder like about the improvisation. Like I don't know, I feel like the way you talk about yourself as a composer and your music, you just seem very very hard on yourself and like very critical, and like I think that like slows you down, and like I wonder like if improvising as like a pianist would be beneficial or just like even interesting, because if you're improvising in live time, you can't go back and like correct things, like things just have to be. I'm curious what that kind of experience would be like for you.
um, I would say it's hugely beneficial, of course, because I'm doing it all the time. But sometimes I sometimes I regret because especially when people ask me, "Hey, what's my intention for a particular passage, for a particular form?" I usually I'm usually unable to come up with a good answer, and I would say over reliance on improvisation make me tend to do the same thing for many pieces.
Oh, and
I
that's something that Megan was talking about. I don't know if you talked about it last week, but we have talked about it plenty. Like changing the
Mhm.
process, you tend to do the same thing if you don't change the process. So you are
Mhm.
always looking to change the
Mhm.
towards changing the process. So have you tried that, Chanting, changing your
And
processes?
yeah.
I I'm trying to be slightly more analytical. I For the current project I'm working on, I after I improvised and wrote a bit, I try to analyze a little bit to see, for example, what pictures, what rhythm, or what kind of techniques that I use, and I try to rearrange my stuff a little bit. Um, but yeah, perhaps maybe I can try to be a little bit more methodical. Maybe at least occasionally, I would say. Sometimes I feel like I'm just getting better and better at improvisation, and then I write more and more pieces based on those better improvisations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think there's other ways to like open up room because I think improvisation is very like crucial to your work and your soundscape. But I don't think like you should not use it. But I think there's a lot of ways to approach using improvisation and music. And I think particularly in like the way to form. Because I know I used to write music completely improvisational, and some of the pieces I wrote that way, I really liked the pieces, but I made the same choices every time, especially in form. I had one form for every single piece. Um, so
Um,
sometimes
which
I don't
will
know.
which would be, how would you describe that form?
The form
Yeah.
for the earlier it was basically like a binary form, and it was very gradual. A gradually becomes B.
Okay, I see. Huh.
Oh,
Was
just
Okay,
remember a thing David taught me. Um,
David.
David,
He's
yeah,
talking
David Felder.
about our old teacher, David
All,
the
Felder.
Felder.
it seems to me that we always talk about David Felder or UB almost
Well,
every episode.
that's how
Well,
we
that's our
met.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our
Yeah,
initial connection.
but
Probably we'll grow out of it at some point. I believe
one
we
one
might what that we might grow out of it at some point, or just get tired of talking about them all the time.
but what I want to say is, in one lesson, David told me to write a list of ornaments that I would like to use in that project. He asked me to list out the all the possibilities. Just imagine
Oh,
if you have
to write down all the materials, for example,
ornaments.
ornaments.
Yes, how I may embed,
Oh, like
I may
variations.
yes, how, but in
Oh,
his
okay,
word,
yeah, yeah. I think
in
I
his
had a
words, he
lesson.
said ornament. Yeah, so
Okay.
I didn't ask him further, but I believe it's like, for example, in classical music you have trill, and trill actually it means like some kind of like a formula or turn or modern or whatever thing. You have a various kind of ornaments that you can apply to a particular passage, particular melody, and and since we talk about rock music, um, there are repetitions, and usually in the second time we s- we perform slightly differently. We we even improvise some kind of ornaments. I and And actually, David told me to write a list of ornaments for that project, and that's very helpful actually. Yes, I if I don't talk about my process today, I don't even remember that. Maybe I could do that again, but but um but sometimes I just go to my intuition directly. So maybe I need to
Yeah.
maybe I need to be a little bit counterintuitive sometimes to be a little bit more organized, a, a little bit more methodical. Oh, but actually,
Mhm.
I I
I don't know.
I'm I'm sometimes methodical actually. For my projects, I write down the pictures, usually in form of like a series. Not
Like writing the harmonies down.
Yeah, usually I write it down, or I would limit what kind of harmony I would use. For example, I would say,
And how do
oh,
you do? How do you use them? Like in a very like this is the sound where these are the sonorities I want, or do you use them as this is the density of the sonorities I want, and I want the piece to move from here towards here? How would you describe it? Because
I
the first one will be more superficial in a way. The second one will be more formal.
maybe I can illustrate with an example. The piece that we just heard is began with an A and C sharp, and then we say, oh, this is a major third.
Hmm.
And then gradually I will build I build upon it, and then I will, hey, for the harmony perhaps I could use something related to this, and I would say, hey, what about augmented chord, whatever harmonies that incorporates an augmented chord, then I would think about that, and then but I don't
That would be
really.
an F, right?
But I am usually very intuitive about that. For example, oh, okay, this augmented code, and then maybe
Or G sharp. Yeah.
and then maybe I add another, like, let's say maybe I add a G sharp, or I will add some other notes to it, and then, oh, okay, yeah, we have a, and then yeah, major seventh here. Okay, so maybe next moment I should think about how to make it a little bit cohesive. Then I will try to think about the major seventh. So so I would say I don't formally lay out a plan for my pitches or harmonies, but I internally would think about how to make the journey, or let's put it this way, make the journey of these kind of pitches a little bit more cohesive, or a little bit sensible. Sometimes I remember I had an old piece that I wrote for chamber orchestra and mezzo soprano, and then I wrote quite a lot of like a very atonal things, and then when the music arrive at the 2/3 of it, and then I included a G major chord there. Oh yeah, and yeah, I did think about the harmony step by step. I mean, yeah, try not to be too loose in terms of pitch organization.
Okay,
So what?
add pitches then. Add pitches as harmonies, as sonorities, and that way you can kind of like are making it more dense and more dense harmonically speaking, and are creating more and more tension. So you are that's how I felt that you did on the piece here on the gong piece. Uh,
Mhm.
Towards the climax. It's like adding up, accumulating. You add. I don't know if it was pitches. You could say pitches because there were some percussion instruments and all of that. But it's like adding more sounds and more sounds, and then kind of like they come together and form a really strong tension, creating thus a climax. Is that how a formal way of you to work with? Would you
Yeah,
say possibly
work on the harmony,
work
and
on the harmony? That's how you think about harmony. The thing with that is that it happens to me is that you end up with the same harmonies because we tend to have the same preferences of harmonies, don't you
I
think? Of sonorities, I would say, or no?
sometimes I
I mean,
Sometimes.
intentionally try something else. For example, I usually dislike perfect fourth, and then recently I try to use it a lot. Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, I do the same thing because in my intuition, I feel limited by my taste, and sometimes I purposely try to work with things I don't like. I also wonder, do you write like very linearly, like from beginning to end, or do you start somewhere and then sometimes go back to the middle and then go? I mean, or is it really like I writing the piece through?
basically linear. But I I usually write too many stuff at the beginning, so sometimes I go back to the beginning and add a so-called real beginning to it. Yeah.
I
And
re- yeah, I remember that was one of my critique to one of the first pieces I heard by you. Like there was a lot of information on that first page that as a listener, not as a composer, as a listener, I could get overwhelmed
and
and stuff like that.
and sometimes I go back to the beginning because I feel like I couldn't continue to I couldn't continue building up more by adding more stuff. Maybe I feel like I don't have anything in my tank, and then okay, maybe I need to go back to the beginning, add some long notes to to make people happier, that I had to satisfy the the durational requirement for it, let's say, and then I go back to the beginning and then add some long notes. Yeah. In the gong piece, actually, I in a place that I added a long terminal for the suspend symbol because I feel like yeah, I I I need to write a much longer piece, but I didn't have time. And then okay, just just try to experiment the idea of writing a long terminal. And then of course I go through it in my head. Like I never want to be an irresponsible composer. I always try that in my head, at least if not trying it on the piano. So I tried it. Hey, yo, yes, that's great. That's long, good, and then I use it. Yeah, but most of the time, my process is linear from point A to point Z, and then yeah,
Yeah, I think there's a
So
lot of I don't know.
yeah,
I like the beauty and like the playfulness in your approach. It almost kind of I don't, to me it almost reminds me of like how like a painter might work. Kind of they're always like kind of physically engaged with their canvas and keep like kind of start with something and then they edit what they have. I think it's yeah. I think there's a lot of I like the way um, the directness, I guess, that you have on your pieces.
I will add that yeah, I told you about the sonorities because you reminded me of my own music. I have a tendency to go towards augmented chords. I kind of love that sonority as a destination. Uh, yeah, and third too. So I have to consciously go against them because if not, all of my pieces will sound the same. Will have the same harmonic language, the same sound world, soundscape. You might say. Although the gestures may change if we don't change the harmonies, uh, well, we might end up writing the same piece in a way over and over. So and a question that I had for you was, would you say that then your pieces are through composed like Schoenberg or something like that,
Yeah, fair
more
comment.
than Stravinsky?
Fair comment actually when you say it's like through compose. Yeah, and 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 I if did I say that actually I write like series. So if somehow so I think about the I don't want to say this word, but I would say the melody or the themes or the lines are
Hmm.
usually based on those so-called series, and then but I freely take notes away or add some other notes to the series when my intuition tells so. Yeah.
Mm.
So I'm not
So
like
you're a very intuitive composer, you
I'm
might
not
say.
like
You're describing yourself as a very intuitive person.
I'm not
Very.
a very rigorous kind of serial composer. Even if I use series, I only use the series in the most obvious manner. So, for example, if I write a series like a C major chord C E G, I would just present it in C E G again. I seldom change it like a retrograde or whatever difficult variation. I just do it very in a rather simple way. Yeah.
No Webern influence on your music then.
Sorry, Rabbit.
Sorry, Webern. Your influence is not that much felt here.
Yeah,
Well, but that's okay for the kind of music you describe yourself as doing. That it's kind of, I see some programmatic aspect to your music too, because you part from the titles. The titles is the first thing you choose. Then you go into the sounds, the initial the title as a concept, title concept. Then go from there towards the sounds. The sounds are the materials. So the materials come from the concept itself, from the program, you might say, from whatever it is that you want to express, or if it's a narrative, like tell as a storyteller, which is curious because you are the only one here that actually writes fiction. Yeah, he's a writer of fiction, people. Uh, and then from there is that you go into the improvisational aspect. You have the materials first that are based on the ideas, and then go into the improvisation. So it's from the very basics. It's kind of like planting a seed from an idea. You have the idea of the full picture, let's say, of the plant, and you plant the seed, and then the seed will grow into whatever it may become. It may become as snow, as the title implied at the beginning, or it may become something different, but you always have that in your head, it will seem to me. Uh, but at the same time, you are led by intuition. You are not confined by that initial concept, which I find very interesting, because you kind of grow out of this very this very visceral in a way, yeah, idea that you want to express, but then kind of like go from the ground up. And it may sound even counterintuitive to what you are describing in a way. It's interesting now that I think about it. How you go about your process. You are a very intuitive composer, but how you think about it and your methodology from point A to point B to point C, etc., etc. It seems very methodological, methodical. Sorry, in a way. If,
Mhm.
when I try to put it into words, like for example, it was very easy for me to come with this, with a 1 2 3 for your methods, but at the same time you go back and forth in it in such a way that it it really cannot be described as that 1, 2, 3 process in the end. That's
Mhm.
just how I interpret it.
because I'm a very messy person, so I have to go back and forth all the time. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes when I improvise, I just do it in my head, and then, oh yeah, what should I write for
See, that's
this?
a material.
The material is so what is about? Sometimes when I describe to my piano student what I am doing, I say, oh, I only think about and then but I need to think about what is about, and that's a problem.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember you describing to me your dissertation piece and going inside the piano and going like, "Oh, I want this to sound like," and then doing different rhythms with it. So yeah, that part of physical closeness, of at least listening it in your head, of with the physical aspect, with the gestural aspect, is very present in the whole process and in the whole intuition aspect
Mhm.
of it. So there are very layers. You are a very complex thinker in the end. That's why you might describe yourself
Mhm.
as messy, because you have these aspects that seem very methodical, very 1, 2, 3, and these other aspects that are very more intuitive, and you have to combine
Mhm.
them in a way that makes a musical form, and that's not an easy thing to do, I would say. So
Some
Well, and I think too, you try to describe your process as like being messy and unorganized, but then like when I hear you talk, I think, wow, like you must have like the most amazing memory and like
yeah,
ability to hold on to ideas and develop them. Like I maybe yeah, I can't do that, especially at this age. I forget things immediately. Everything has to be like recorded and written
yes.
down. And I still might forget even with that. Um,
I
Sometimes I come up with a sound in my head, and if I don't notate it immediately or record it, like singing it, I will forget about it. It's
I
yeah.
like bye bye concept.
I don't
So
know, but I told you guys, right? I when I get stuck, I go to take a shower, and then maybe some of the ideas are eliminated by the water already, and then I don't remember them. Yeah, I I I I I I don't wanna be like. I mean, I try to be a, a more rigorous person actually. So, um, I I check on and off about the for example the unity of the piece. At the same time, I check where if my piece have enough contrast. I also do this kind of thing. I check. Oh, yeah. Is it unnecessary? For example, I do ask myself, where is this sound unnecessary? Do I truly think about it? Do I truly hear it in my head? Do if I really hear it, but do I notate it correctly? I do think about that. I have this kind of struggle because a lot of times when I rely on intuition, and then the next day I discard my draft. I when I wrote my dissertation, I had many files. I should have shown Huang. That's why perhaps you forgot, but one day when you said when you said I should have like started the writing earlier, then I said actually I started very early. I started very early, but I just sucked, and and then I discarded a lot of drafts and sketches. Yeah.
we talked plenty during that time. Well, Megan, do you
yeah,
do you
I
have
also
any?
wonder. Well,
Yeah.
I wonder too, like if I mean, if it would be interesting for you to like just record your own improvisations for your own, abilities to go back and look at them when you work on the piano.
Oh, by the way, actually, I just remembered I did record once or twice. I mean, for for each project, not once or twice for live, but I for some older projects I improvise a few times and record them. I but a lot of them is more like my voice. I just making some random sound that I liked, and then I maybe in my head it's more complex or too hard to sing. So then I just making some kind of random noise, and then and then when I listen to it again, I would remember. Oh, that's let's say that is tone loss blowing. Oh, that is whatever symbol, and then I kind of remember this kind of CD things, but all of them are useful. I would say. I sometimes I argue with people. Music may not be the most necessary thing in the world, but our world is enriched by a lot of unnecessary stuff. When you cook, you season your food, you marinate your meat. Actually, you don't need spices, herbs, or seasoning to survive. But the food is getting more delicious because of all of this. And I believe my composition is like this. I embrace my silliness or playfulness, and then at the same time I look into it and try to write out a recipe for the dish and notate my music. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, uh, I started with Apollo, and I will. You do you have anything else to say, Megan?
No, I mean, I think the only thing I have left on here is like, I think all composers are very self-critical, but like you seem to be particularly so. And I just wonder what it would be like to just write a piece of music and like allow music that you might deem the next day as bad just to like sit on the page and like I don't know. Um, I wonder if that would be
A
an
good. It would be a
interesting
good
experience.
exercise, at least as an exercise. Yeah, I would agree
Yeah,
definitely. But at the same time, I see a lot
yeah.
of pieces here, like you've written over the past few years. You haven't stopped, man. It's like,
But I do think like your music does have, yeah, you have a lot of music. Probably the most I think prolific of the three of us. But
definitely,
I do
yes.
see I do feel like I can really hear your personality and like everything I've heard of yours, which I really like and enjoy.
Thank you very much. You
Yeah,
guys are very nice.
Yeah.
yeah. I think the same. Your music has personality, and it is not another person's personality. It's your
Mhm.
personality,
It
and
it feels really genuine.
yeah, authentic and genuine. So good job
Mhm.
there.
Thank you.
And well,
You're
you
very
you
nice again.
you said that music wasn't necessary, and that, well, Apollo will probably reprimand you for that, because he's also the god of
Yeah.
arrows, of sickness and stuff like that. So he's the god of music, but I will be careful if I were you saying that stuff. But yeah, thank you. Like, is there anything else you'd like to add to how you view music and how you process it, how you go about your process?
I think I'm good at it. I'm good. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not good at my composition, but I think I'm done with my presentation today.
There you are, being hard on yourself again, as Megan said. Anything else you want to add, Megan?
No, I think yeah, I like
We've covered.
the
uh,
scope of the conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, I think we should say bye here. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shanting. Like, that was pretty insightful. About your music and about music in general. How one may go about
Mhm.
a process, like with the materials from idea back and forth, intuition versus method. We talk about plenty of topics here. It was a pretty interesting. Uh, I don't want to say interesting. It was pretty insightful towards the musical process of shunting and in general how one may go around it and about it. So I guess this is it. We'll see you. I'll see you guys next week. Right? Be safe.
Hey,
Right.
yeah, bye.